council meeting. If you will stand with me, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You can be seated.
I was just going to follow you.
I will now call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is confirmation of a quorum.
Councilmember Kaler.
Present.
Tholen. Present. Rummel.
Present.
Erickson.
Present.
Markworth.
Present.
Rowan.
Present.
Mayor Levesey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Next item is the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Kaler.
Aye.
Tholen. Aye. Rummel.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Markworth.
Aye.
Rowan.
Aye.
Mayor Levesey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
So next item on the agenda is actually recognition of Missouri Local Government Week. So I have a proclamation on behalf of the city. This is something that happens annually, but we want to take the time to recognize especially all of the city employees, all of the hard work that they do in keeping the city running on a day-to-day basis throughout the year. And so I have a couple of whereas clauses that I'm going to read, making this Missouri Local Government Week here in Blue Springs. It says, the week of May 3rd through the 9th is celebrated as Missouri Local Government Week. And whereas Missouri Local Government Week is an opportunity to recognize and celebrate the dedication and contributions of local government officials who are at the forefront of making vital decisions that affect the lives of all Missourians within our community. And whereas the local government is the government closest to the citizens and the one with the most direct daily impact on residents. And whereas local government serves as the foundation of democracy in our state and nation, serving as citizens through city councils, county commissions, school boards, among others. And whereas local governments work to improve the quality of life in communities across the great state of Missouri, now therefore, Chris Levesey, Mayor of Blue Springs, and the City Council do hereby proclaim this week, May 3rd through the 9th, as Missouri Local Government Week. Let's give it a round of applause for Local Government Week. So you will see throughout the week from City Communications a lot of celebration of the work that happens here at the city. As the resolution outlines, a lot of important work happens on behalf of residents here at the local government level. I will just say much more than it happens at the federal and state level because I can, and there's nobody to disagree with me otherwise. And so we're going to be celebrating all the work that happens, and we hope that the residents will do that as well. So pretty exciting thing to recognize here in Blue Springs. So next item on the agenda, we have several public hearings, all having to do with the same project. We're going to take them one at a time here. So first thing I'm going to do is open the public hearing related to the Lux 2 rezoning and plan development concept plan. Open the public hearing. The city clerk will read items for the record.
Mayor, the city has one exhibit to enter into the record. City Council information form dated March 24th, 2026 with the following attachments. Staff report with attachments, affidavit of publication in the Examiner on February 7th, 2026, 185-foot notification map, owner's list of property owners within 185 feet of the site, copy of letter sent to said property owners, Title 4 Land Use Section Blue Springs Code of Ordinance by reference, 2014 Comprehensive Plan by reference, and bill approving rezoning and plan development concept plan. This is all we have to enter for the record.
Okay, so I now swear everyone in, so if both staff and we'll just go ahead and do anybody that's going to speak on this item, if you will stand and I can just swear everybody on at once. Okay, if you'll raise your hand, if you swear the testimony you're about to give in this case to be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, then when you come up, you'll just have to give us your name and address for the record. Staff, if you'll continue with your presentation.
Chantel Fry, Planner 3, 903 West Main Street, Blue Springs, Missouri, 64015. So good evening, Mayor and members of the council. This evening is a request from David Williams on behalf of the City of Blue Springs for rezoning a plan development concept plan for approximately 2.9 acres located at 1500 Northwest Northridge Drive. The request is to rezone the property from a general business with a plan unit development overlay with a generalized zoning of MF18 with the plan development designation to allow a mixed-use building. The proposal is for a 5-story structure. The ground floor includes approximately 11,500 square feet of retail space along with garages for the residents. And the upper 4 floors would include approximately 7 residential units. Those units would range from studios up to 3-bedroom apartments. So overall, this is an integrated mixed-use development with the retail and residential. The site is surrounded by a mix of uses. To the north, you have Lux 1 Apartments, which is already zoned in MF18. To the south is Price Chopper, which is zoned to general business. And to the east is 7 Highway with an additional commercial development. And to the west is the Northridge Villas, which is a single-family residential. The property itself has remained undeveloped for many years. Looking at the comprehensive plan, the property falls within the N1 area-specific plan, which is designated as mixed use with a retail dominant. The plan specifically envisions small-scale retail that may be supported by residential uses, particularly on the upper stories. Staff finds that the proposed development is consistent with both the future land use map and the N1 area plan. The MF18 zoning district is intended for the high-density multifamily buildings, generally 4 stories or taller, and are often located along major transportation corridors, are serving as a transition along more intense and less intense uses. Given the site's proximity to 7 Highway and the surrounding commercial and residential mix, staff finds that the MF18 is appropriate at this location and functions as a transitional zoning district. I still have more. From the building design perspective, the proposal consists of a mid-rise apartment building that will incorporate cast stone bays to provide a strong visual foundation. The upper floors are articulated to add depth and variation, while stepbacks are utilized to reduce the perceived mass of the building. Balconies are also integrated to the facade, contributing to both architectural interest and resident amenity. The primary entrance is clearly defined along the frontage. The building height is just under 60 feet, which is within the allowable range for the MF18. Setbacks are significantly exceed minimum requirements, and the building coverage is well below the maximum. So there's adequate room on site for circulation and buffering. Staff finds that the renderings meet the intent of the city's design standards, with the final architectural details to be reviewed at the PD final stage. Parking has been calculated to meet code requirements with 170 spaces required and 170 spaces provided. The applicant is proposing a shared parking agreement with O'Reilly Auto Parts and Price Chopper, and documentation of these shared parking agreements will be required at the time of the final PD review and approval process. Access will remain along the existing 2 driveways at Bernadette Crossing. A traffic impact study was conducted and determined that the existing roadway network can accommodate the projected traffic, and no off-site improvements are required at this time. Because this is a planned development, the applicant is requesting a waiver for modifications to include that they would continue using Bernadette Crossing as currently designed as a private road, and incorporating shared parking agreements and reducing the 25-foot parking setback to 7.2 to 7.5 feet. Utilities are available and adequate to serve the development. The sanitary sewer has sufficient capacity and the public water is available. A final stormwater management report will be required prior to the approval of the final PD plan to confirm that the detention facilities function as designed. Fire protection standards and hydrant spacing will also be verified prior to a final approval. After reviewing the application against the zoning map amendment and plan development criteria, staff finds that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, supports the intent of the MF18 district, and will not create significant adverse impacts on surrounding properties, and reflects sound planning and urban design principles. The development of this long vacant site also supports economic vitality in the corridor and provides additional residential units to support nearby commercial uses. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning and the plan development concept plan subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. And here are some of the renderings of Lux 2 that were provided. And that's another rendering. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And the applicant is here to speak on behalf.
Any questions for staff from the council? I know this information is in the packet, but just for the public, how many units was the apartments, and what can you tell me about the commercial, how big and how much square footage is
So
the commercial
there's
side?
the upper floor, 4 stories will have 70 residential units that will vary between studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, and 3. And the lower retail area is approximately 11,500 square feet of retail underneath. And that will also include 1-car garages for the residents too.
All right, seeing none, then is the applicant present, want to come give a presentation, answer some questions? If you're being sworn in, then just give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Kurt Peterson. I'm at 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri, here on behalf of the applicant, which is Lux One LLC. We have Major Hammett and Pete Williams. You need to know back here who are the owners of that entity and the developers. Not every night that I get to say and have much to say. It's a really robust staff report and a really detailed presentation from staff. I will make a note, just so you can see a lot of projects across the metro that, and I said this in planning zoning too, but happens to be super true and worth saying again, which is vertical mixed use like this is what most cities are just clamoring for so often. Do you have any clients that want to build some vertical mixed use in this location or that location? And sometimes the answer is yes, but oftentimes the answer is no. And the reason is, it happens to be really expensive to do. Some of you are maybe even in the industry and know that vertical mixed use requires that podium, which is significantly more expensive than just start from the ground with sticks, as we say, with lumber. So, really excited to have this project running, this vertical mixed use. Also, just the idea of just watching what's happening up and down 7 and getting north of 70 and seeing second investment by these 2 gentlemen, I just think it really will reinvigorate and bring more investment to follow, hopefully. So we're excited about it. And the last is, and I also said this in planning zoning, I think I've maybe had one project in over 20 years where I can say this, so this will be the second. This developer not only has proven themselves with a project right next door that I never talked to anybody that didn't say that's amazing, but they actually live there, both of them. And one of them plans to even move into this project should it be approved. So with that, that's somebody putting their money where their mouth is, say we care about quality and how it's going to go out there. Mayor, thank you for your time. If there's any questions that you have.
Questions from the council for the developer? What can you tell us about the plan for the commercial property? I know usually there's some behind the scenes that can't be made public, but any for the intent of the commercial and what's going to be used for?
Well, Mayor, we'd be happy to share the part that is public, because you're right, we're talking to tenants, we don't announce that, they're potentially, their confidentiality, but I will say that, again, it's just under 12,000 square feet, as you can see in the rendering, there's glass along the first floor. From the very first time I talked to the gentleman about what they envisioned, they'd really like to get a sit-down restaurant there. Can we ever promise that? No. All we can do is build a really expensive, nice space in a good location, and then hope that it, build dreams, right? Build it and they will come. So we don't have any names to share, but from the very beginning, that it even says restaurant, right? I'm getting older. The whole point is that is what we're aiming for, at least for part of the space. So that's the public part.
Okay. Any other questions from the council?
Your Honor, may I?
Councilman.
I have some questions on the residential, and I know that we have the apartment complex right next door to the Flex One, and I apologize, I'm still kind of new to this. I'm not, just kind of some questions on this is general stuff that probably everyone already knows. The occupancy right now, we're completely full, and then there's a approximately 70 spaces in there with between different sizes. And there's I guess, a need, or are you guys filling these? Are they already being spoken for?
So we don't pre-release it this early, but this is really the big night if we're successful. And now you can really heavily market. If you do that before you have a project approved, first of all, it's, I would say, not overly respectful to the body that needs to give you approval if you're out marketing. But once you have that, you get right into it. And yes, we do with projects like this pre-lease before you have it built.
And you're correct. This is kind of what we see happening, of course, in our neighbors in Lee Summit and other places we're building apartments that look very similar to this. And this is a very nice rendering. So thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.
Do I understand the current apartments has a waiting list of some kind, or at least has in the past?
I guess
That's probably what I think he
Yeah,
was
thank you.
referring to, was you're not
That's why you're
pre-leasing them, but the current apartment has a waiting list that this could fill.
We know the demand is there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for your time. Appreciate the presentation. Any other comments from the council before I go to the public? Okay, then we will go to the public. Does anyone in the audience like to speak in support of? Anyone speak in opposition to? Opposition to? Anything else before I close the public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. We're going to take each public hearing in a row. So the next one is a public hearing on the Major Lux Community Improvement District. So I'll open the public hearing for that one. City clerk has some items to read for the record.
Mayor, the city has one exhibit to enter into the record. City Council information form dated April 29th, 2026 with the following attachments. Ordinance to approve petition and establish district with petition attached as Exhibit A. This is all we have to enter for the record.
All right, I guess next up, I just need to swear everybody in again, don't I? Okay, if you're gonna be presenting on this one, staff or otherwise, could you please stand, raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this case to be the truth, so help you God? Okay. Do we have a presentation for staff for this one? Just Baker Tilly? Okay, I guess Baker Tilly, then you're up next. No, the developer's up next, okay. Developer will present first. Who from the developer is gonna come give us a presentation on the CID? I feel like we just saw you. It's good to have you back. Again, I need your name and record, or name and address for the record.
Kurt Peterson, 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri. And if we're able to, much of this, don't fret, much of this you know, and we'll go quickly through it, but we do this because it is a public hearing, so we like it in the record. So what I'd like to cover, most importantly, we'll at the end, whatever questions you have, but at least affirmatively cover is, again, moving out, as we did, the developer is looking at the private site, which staff showed us in the prior public hearing. Spend a moment on the proposed project, but then what I really want to talk about in this public hearing is the last bullet on the screen, which is the proposed public-private partnership. So we can advance through, thank you. And again, we have Major Hammond and Dave Williams who are the principals, that is the owners of the entity, Lux One LLC, that will be developing this project. They have lots of experience. We always like to say before we would ever ask governing body to approve a public-private partnership, because that's what it is. It lasts a long time. It lasts a couple decades plus. We like to make sure that we present our bona fides, that we're somebody that's worth trusting. Now, in this case, you've already seen their work next door, but you can see some other projects other than Major Lux, which is the project just north. You can see experience across the city with other notable projects. The project site we called out. We hope to make it much prettier than this teal aging parking lot that you see on the screen. And I can't remember, staff may have said this previously, but just in case for the record, that we did close on the purchase of this piece from the city. So that again shows earnestness and really wanting to make this project work, that we went ahead and did that. Next screen. These are the details. I'll let you even run through it with your eyes again, because we've talked about it a lot tonight in terms of the details for the ground floor space and upper 4 stories that are multi-family units across 3 different, if you count studios, 4 different types of units. Lots of amenities, which you can see on the screen. Lux One typically. Construction timeline, if we're fortunate enough to get approval tonight, we are going to move faster than lightning. You will end up seeing, before we even get to final plan and building permit, we will be pulling permits to go ahead and start the demolition and site prep, so that these gentlemen are absolutely focused and determined to be open this time-ish next year, I believe. They have experience, so we wanted to give you a sense of what the timeline would look like. Just another image we have that shows you the site going to the top. You've seen that one. Sharp and one more angle. And then we come to my favorite part, which is the proposed public-private partnership. So it has 2 major parts. One, it uses 2 different tools that the state has afforded the city the option to use. One is called Chapter 100, and the other is called Community Improvement District, or CID. The Chapter 100 actually has 2 components. The CID has 1. The Chapter 100's first of two components is real property tax abatement. The proposal in front of you, and what your financial advisor has looked at in detail, Baker Tilly, is a proposal for 15 years of real property tax abatement of 100%, followed by 5 additional years at 75%. There's an asterisk that you might not be able to read on the screen, but it's simply noting that the Central Jackson Fire District has the option under the state statute now to opt out of a city-approved Chapter 100 real property tax abatement. They have chosen not to opt completely out, but instead to still have 75% of the taxes that would otherwise come to them, and then 25% would be just like the rest of the tax jurisdictions, subject to the relevant abatement. That is the first piece. The second piece of Chapter 100 would be sales tax exemption on construction materials, so that when we buy lumber or any other material that goes into the construction of the building and site, we would not have to pay state or local sales tax. That's the second benefit of Chapter 100. The last piece that's part of the proposed partnership is an add-on sales tax under the CID. The sales tax would be 1%, and as is probably intuitive to you, would apply in that first story where restaurant or retail sales would happen that are subject to the Missouri sales tax. That would last for 27 years, and we always note this, there's no special assessments that would be levied as part of the CID, even though that's something that statute allows. So I think that was the last slide, is it not? There we go. So with that, we could certainly go into more details. I know you all have your financial advisors really detailed analysis showing that this in fact does need this public-private partnership moving forward. That's good that the city does that, like most cities. If you want to get into details about why that is, or the specific returns or things like that, I do this for a living and love to talk about it. But with that, I'll stand aside, Mayor, until there's questions.
We see if there's any questions for the developer first.
So we're splitting this up, right? So this right
Yeah,
now is
this
the-
is technically just the CID
Okay.
public hearing, yes.
I should have said that
Yep.
for efficiency, I usually do this.
Yeah, no,
I'll say
you're right.
ditto if you know what I mean.
Yep.
So, going back to the commercial part of it, you as a developer has interest in making sure that's some kind of retail, restaurant, something that has sales tax generation and not a service, a lawyer, an insurance agent, something like that.
With every financial interest to make that.
Any other questions before we move on to the next presenter? Okay, thank you for your time, appreciate it. Now we can have our representative from Baker Tilly please come up. If you've already been sworn in, then all I need is your name and address for the record. And it looks like they're gonna give you a mic. If you haven't noticed, we seem to be having some issues with the system, so we'll try to make it work.
Very good. I'm Colby Krzyzanowski with Baker Tilly. We're officed out of 7285 West 132nd Street, Suite 220, Overland Park, Kansas, 64213. And I'm here to present on the Major Works 2 development. We are the city's financial advisor. We reviewed the project proposal from the applicant at a very detailed level and presented what we appropriately call a but-for report. That report not only offers the argument for the statutory basis of but-for, would the project continue without the incentive, but also it is a deep dive into all the assumptions from the developer for the development to get really endeavor to answer any questions that there may be from the public side of the development from the city's financial advisor in an impartial way. We can go to the next slide. We're going to start off right away with the requested assistance. I think in Kurt's presentation, he discussed some of the requests, so we won't get into too much detail since that was presented, but for the rate of return, which is really the basis of whether or not the project needs additional public-private partnership, we looked at the return without incentive, which is at 5.24%. The lower boundary of the PwC survey, which is a survey of investors who invest in properties much like this throughout the country, their range of what projects to invest in and what returns must a project earn in order to get this kind of investment is between 6 and 10%, and that is the benchmark that we use to establish whether or not a project needs some additional assistance. With assistance, this project hits right in the middle of that boundary, which is 8% total return. You can go to the next slide. And before we get into too much about the project, I know that we covered it in great detail earlier, but we evaluated the project as Kurt mentioned it, which is the total 101,000 square feet, 70 units, 12,000 square feet of retail space across the acreage that was described in the zoning presentation. Next slide. The requested incentive package has a total gross value of $7.1 million over the entire term of the incentive, with a present value of $4.2. It's composed of the sales tax exemption on construction materials through Chapter 100, with an approximate value of $400,000. The property tax abatement for the full term at $3.7 million, and then a CID sales tax of approximately $300,000. We have a 20-year Chapter 100 and a 27-year CID contemplated in this project. And across the various sources, we have a debt equity mix of 60% debt, 40% equity in the project as proposed by the applicant. Go to the next slide. One thing we want to talk about as part of our analysis is not only the conclusions we developed here, but the process by which we arrived at all those conclusions. We sort of take a 5-step process to review this. We review the project as it was proposed by the applicant, especially with respect to their overall returns for the project. And by returns, we mean that rate of return discussed. Internal rate of return is a return metric based on non-interest rate sensitive returns for a project, and that allows us to benchmark it not just locally and in the current time, but across time for what investors are looking for, and it gives us a really objective metric to measure these projects against. The next is that we want to take a close look at the project revenues. This is where we seek to go to other sources to evaluate both the rental revenues on a residential basis, but also revenues on a commercial basis to see if what the applicant is proposing is in line with the current market. So we want to ask questions like, are the revenues within the market? Are they understated, overstated? What is the correct benchmark? And we work to answer those questions very diligently in the report. We also look at this from an expense basis. What are the expenses of the project? Again, are those overstated, understated? In which direction did we evaluate those to show what the impact on the return is? Beyond that, we establish this internal rate of return, what it is without the incentive, and then we compare it again to the PwC investor survey and other sources as necessary to establish whether the project meets the return ranges that investors would demand. If they don't, we determine that additional incentive would be required for the project to happen. We took a close look at the project cost overview. This is where we're getting into, are the costs reasonable? Did they make sense? Overall, we're looking at the cost to construct, cost to acquire, costs across the board. We're looking for sensitivity as well. So if construction costs seem elevated or understated, we like to look and say, how sensitive is the project on that, and what margin would those costs have to adjust for it to be no longer requiring a public-private partnership. And we found that both within those ranges and according to that level of sensitivity, the project still met all the standards to pass the but-for test, as you would say. There were a few items that we were looking at that were a little outside of what we might consider a normal range, but these are items related to acquisition that are oftentimes benchmarkable, but there's commonly circumstances associated with why those may be above or below. And if they're a small percentage of the total budget, then we then look at what the actual sensitivity of that item is. And we found, by and large, every one of the assumptions baked into this project was in the realm of reason for this project and was sensitized appropriately so that we can make a confident finding that a public-private partnership is necessary. So for the operating assumptions, we'll get a little bit into the level of rent, the retail revenue, and the vacancy rates. To start right off, we evaluated, because this is a multifamily mixed-use development, how reasonable are each of the rental rates for both commercial and residential, and we determined that all of the rates were within what we would consider a market range for the area, and we took a very close look at a number of comparable properties throughout the city and throughout the rest of eastern Jackson County. For the vacancy rates, we established that there was a reasonable measure of vacancy, potentially even a little bit lower vacancy rate than we would see in other comparable investments. And for the retail revenue, we evaluate that on a lease per square foot basis because this is a property developer. Their revenues come in the form of per square foot leases generally, and we found that range was well within what we would expect in the greater market. Next slide, please. Returning to the internal rate of return calculation, we're looking at a rate of return below the market range, as we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, with this public-private partnership that is right in the middle of the return range we would expect for a project like this to happen in the current market. Next slide. In conclusion, we have the primary constraint were a few costs associated with acquisition, and as mentioned earlier, the high construction price. Though it was expensive to construct these buildings, we found that the applicant's construction price was very much in line with what we would expect from a market range for a development of this type. We looked at not just comparable markets, but comparable buildings within the wider market and the city, county, and the metropolitan area for comparable markets. And then we evaluated how sensitive each of these variables were, because most of the variables we evaluated were largely in line. The sensitivity analysis proved out that there had to be wide swings in the project details for this project to no longer meet the but-for test or to be a valid candidate for the public-private partnership. So we concluded the incentives do appear to be necessary to support the project as proposed under the current market conditions. While recognizing the project may be feasible under more ideal conditions, those ideal conditions, they would have to be substantially more ideal than they are now for this project to go forward. Next slide. And we have our information here. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to pass the torch or be available for any questions.
No, I was clarifying with staff, so this is an appropriate public hearing if you have questions about the Chapter 100 bonds as well. And we can also bring the developer back up if you want to clarify some of those. Baker Tilly is the one that does the analysis on the but-for. Gilmore and Bell, which will be up here, are our attorneys that prepare the documents and all that. So if you have questions about the market analysis for either of these incentives, you would be the guy to ask, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'll ask one while they're thinking about it. So CID, for the record, for residents who watch us later, what can CID funds be used for? Do you even know specifically what they will be used for this project?
I would defer to legal counsel for that.
Okay. We can ask somebody else that question. Any questions about the analysis that was just presented to us? Can you give it a little bit? You talk about 8% return, and your target is 6 to 10%. What does that usually look like? You talk about swings in the market and what that might justify it. What would make that a little different? What would get it closer to 6? What would get closer to 10? Why is that the target return for something like this?
So what the fortunate part about this specific return range we're evaluating is that multifamily doesn't tend to vacillate too much from what we consider this target range. It does move over time slightly, but this is a pretty durable range as we look into projects like this. The type of things that can move one of these incentive targets is very much baked into the project revenues and the project expenses. If expenses came in substantially higher, you would see that market rate of return drop substantially. And obviously most projects, there's a desire to bake in some room for those increases, which normally materialize. That's why we look at the construction costs with a cost estimator to understand what that range actually looks like. With project revenues, obviously with such a very housing heavy development, we're looking at how close are those to the surrounding market and how reasonable are those rental rates in the current market and looking into the future. And you would have to realize revenues substantially higher than the ones that are contemplated in this analysis to get this project into the return range without some kind of public-private partnership. And conversely, rent rates substantially below to get it much farther down.
So what would this look like if this wasn't a mixed-use development, if this was purely residential? How would that affect the analysis for something like that?
It would be very hard to say without knowing exactly what the unit mix would be, so.
Sure. Any other questions for our presenter? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
He's the last one I have to bring up. Do I need Gilmore and Bell now? Okay, I had them on for the next public hearing, so, okay. Then I guess you could come up, you've already been sworn in, then give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is David Bushak. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Gilmore and Bell. We're at Crown Center, address is 2504 Grand Boulevard, and I am filling in for Sarah Granath tonight. She is the attorney at Gilmore and Bell who has been working with the city team, city staff. She did the bulk of the legal work, the document preparation, so I'm filling in tonight and I can speak to the project. So I will start with a brief introduction. This is the first time I've spoken to this city council in I think about 8 years. I've been in-house with the city of Lee Summit for the last 7 or so years, and before that I was with Gilmore and Bell for 15 years. So it's been a while since I've spoken to the city council here. There's 3 different types of incentives that the city can use. Of all the incentive tools that you might ever consider, there's really 3 categories. One is tax redirection, the second is tax abatement or tax reduction, and the third is a new form of tax. So the incentive request that you're seeing tonight is the second and third category. It reduces the cost to the developer through tax abatement, and it generates a new form of reimbursement through the CID sales tax. So those, if you were to boil it down to what these incentives do, that's what the function of these 2 incentives are. Tax reduction and a new form of taxes to reimburse the developer. And then as you've already heard, there's 2 types of incentives you're considering tonight, and so I guess this is a bit of a procedural comment. Even though we're talking about both of these incentives during this public hearing, during the next public hearing, we can just enter all the evidence and testimony into that record, which I think is what the mayor referenced. So the way I like to think about the incentives and describe them to you in a very simple, non-legalese way is think about it from a timeline perspective. What happens when the project is constructed and then over a period of time, so you have a good understanding of what the incentives are. During the construction period, sales tax exemption would be afforded to the project through the Chapter 100 incentive, and the valuation of that, based on the calculations provided by the developer, is about $400,000, which is about 1.9% of the total project cost. So one of the benchmarks that I typically look at is total project cost compared to the value of the incentive being requested to the developer as a percentage of the total project cost. In this case, total project cost $21 million. The sizing of the bonds is $23 million to provide, I think, some additional capacity during construction. But the benefit of the sales tax exemption through Chapter 100 would be about 1.9% of the total project cost. Then moving on through the timeline. After the project is constructed, during the first 15 years, there would be 100% real property tax abatement, which means there would be no taxes paid to Jackson County for the land or the improvements. And the way that is achieved is title is transferred to the city. So during the entire period of abatement, which would be 20 years, the city will own bare title to the land and will be leased back to the developer. And then there's a lease document that's in your meeting packet that contains a number of protections for the city. So the project will look and feel just like a private project. It'll look just like an apartment complex and the retail below, but the city will be the fee owner and it will be leased back to the developer to effectuate the property tax abatement. So for the first 15 years, 100% abatement, and then years 16 through 20, 75% abatement. The total value of that incentive to the developer is about $3.7 million, which is about 17.5% of the total project cost. And then the CID, which is an extra sales tax imposed just on the retail at the project, is projected to generate a net present value benefit of about $288,000, which is 1.3% of total project costs. So if you were to tally up all the incentives they're requesting and the benefit of those 3 components, it's about 20.7% of the total project costs. What I'm used to seeing from my work is a range when incentives are requested, typically between 5 and 25%. I've seen variations both ways. I've seen some incentive requests that are lower, some that are much higher, but the typical range of incentive requests is usually between 5 and 25%. And so this incentive package at 20% is at the higher end, but within that range that I typically see. As far as the mechanics go, when the CID is formed, if you approve the CID, then the CID will go through a sales tax election process with the single property owner, and then the sales tax will only apply to the sales that occur at this property. So it doesn't affect the sales tax rate of any other property, it's just the geographic area. And to answer the mayor's question from earlier, they are requesting that the CID only be used for asphalt paving and asphalt markers. So the more general answer to your question, Mayor, is a CID can fund 2 categories of improvements. If you were to make a blight finding, then the CID can be used to rehabilitate the property and get rid of the blight. That's not the case in this situation. They're just requesting this for public improvements, which is the second major category of what CIDs can fund. So through a structure that will be used to make the asphalt paving and the paving markers a public improvement from the CID's perspective, not the city's perspective, that's what makes it reimbursable as a reimbursable project cost into the CID. So as those sales tax dollars are generated, that will be used to reimburse the developer for the asphalt paving and the paving markers. And then the Chapter 100 transaction, I already mentioned that the city takes title and the property will be leased back to the developer. The lease contains a number of protections for the city. The other two documents in your meeting packet, there's a trust indenture which governs how the money flows involving UMB Bank as the trustee. Even though these are called bonds, they're not general obligation bonds of the city. There's no full faith and credit pledged by the city to back these bonds. And in fact, the developer purchases the bonds. So the developer will obtain their own private financing. The developer will buy the bonds from the city, and then the developer will pay back those bonds over time, so that it does not impact the city's general obligation bond ability or anything associated with your geo capacity. Let's see, a couple other questions that came up, I already answered. What can the CID spend? Another question, Mayor, you asked about sales tax generators, and Mr. Peterson answered that it is in their best interest to have not services, but actual sales. And I suppose I can reaffirm that conclusion, because the CID sales tax dollars are only generated from retail sales. So services that don't actually sell something, they would not receive the sales tax reimbursement from the Community Improvement District. You've already heard a thorough analysis, the but-for analysis, which is independent justification for why the incentives are needed, and you've heard that explanation. And I think that wraps up all of my initial conclusions. I can certainly talk in more detail or answer other questions, but I think that's a good summary of the two incentives for your consideration.
Questions for Gilmore and Bell from the council? Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for answering my questions. Any comments before I go to the public? Anyone in the audience like to speak in support of, in opposition to? I will close the public hearing. Now I close that public hearing, just open the next one. We'll open the next public hearing, the Industrial Development Project and Chapter 100 bonds. City Clerk has items to read for the record.
Mayor, the city has one exhibit to enter into the record. City Council information form dated April 28th, 2026 with the following attachments: trust indenture, lease agreement, bond purchase agreement, presentation, but for analysis and ordinance to approve plan, issuance of bonds and approved bond documents with plan attached as Exhibit A. This is all we have to enter for the record.
All right, again, if you may speak on this issue, if you can stand again, let me swear you in. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this case be the truth, so help you God? Okay. Let's just start all over. It looks like developers already headed up there, so give us your name and address for the record.
Mayor Kurt Peterson, 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri, and I would ask that everything I said in the previous public hearings, honestly, the last two would be inserted here, and then I'd be available for any questions.
There's a microphone on your dais there, if you can use that. Okay, so the items from the last public hearing will now be included. So what questions do you have for the developer?
Well, I guess I'll start. On Lux 1, was there any public financing?
There was not.
Okay, so what is the big difference of why we're asking for such a large public finance?
It's a great question, and there's nuances, but the big answer is that was straight multifamily. It didn't have any mixed use. It didn't have podium construction, so it was a totally different, from a construction and cost perspective, totally different project.
Okay.
Short answer.
As far as the abatement, 100% seems rather high for 15 years. Is that standard or what you're seeing, or is there a different way to do this? It just seems like we're taking quite a bit of property tax.
No, you're right. This is not unheard of, but like Mr. Bushek said, it's on the spectrum. It's medium, high. There's so much history. These things to come together to get to the place where we're here before you tonight take, I don't think I'm exaggerating, 6 months, 4 to 6 months. There's lots that go into it, and I will say this, and again, a lot of people in the room have been through this, so they can shake their head. We didn't even start here, but as you start all the variables, as you put it together to get to a reasonable return that your financial advisor has affirmed, this is where we ended up. So again, looking to kind of the earnestness, we knew we needed to be able to get it financed. Didn't start exactly here, and as we put everything together, this is where it ended up, because this isn't less than or more than what we needed to get it financed. This is what we needed. So the last thing I'll throw in, I think the reason, not I think, I know, more is needed on a vertical mixed use podium structure like this here is because the bigger we go with projects, we have scale, and it helps a lot. And so a project that's amazing on a small piece of land here, that'll make a huge difference, but it's small, it has 70 units and 12,000 feet of retail, is incredibly hard, actually, to be able to take those fixed costs of all the amenities, and all those sorts of things, and to make it work. So I think that explains why we're on that medium high part of the what I see out there, Mr. Bushek sees, what Baker Tilly sees.
As far as the amenities, are some of those gonna be mixed use between the two projects, or is it all, the ones that you listed, is there gonna be 2 dog parks then? Is there gonna be one for Lux 1 and one for Lux 2?
If we need to get into the fine details, we can, because we have an owner, designer, architect here. But at the high level, if we want to be at that, yes, there's sure.
Any other questions for the developer? Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it. I've got Gilmore and Bell coming up again. Does anybody else need to present or just be available for questions? So that's how I'm reading it. Is that right? Okay. Any questions for either Baker Tilly or Gilmore and Bell before we close this public hearing? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience like to speak in support of the Chapter 100 bonds? Anyone speak in opposition to? All right, I will close this public hearing. Next item on the agenda is item 8, introduction and reading of Bill 5399, approving the Lux 2 plan development and rezoning.
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
First reading of Bill 5399, an ordinance rezoning property from GB PUD RO, General Business Plan Unit Development Restricted Overlay, to MF 18 PD, High Density Multifamily Residential Plan Development, and approving a plan development concept plan for Lux 2, Major Lux 2, Major Lux 2, at 1500 Northwest North Ridge Drive, Blue Springs, Jackson County, Missouri.
I move to approve the first reading and proceed with the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, now discussion, this is just discussion on the rezoning and the plan development concept plan. Any discussion on this item? Okay, seeing none, then all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Second reading.
Second reading of Bill 5399, an ordinance rezoning property from GB PUD RO, General Business Plan Unit Development Restricted Overlay, to MF 18 PD, High Density Multifamily Residential Plan Development, and approving a plan development concept plan for Lux 2, Major Lux 2, Major Lux 2, at 1500 Northwest North Ridge Drive, Blue Springs, Jackson County, Missouri.
Your Honor, I move we approve on the second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call.
Councilmember Tholen.
Aye.
Brummel.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Markworth.
Aye.
Rowan.
Aye.
Kaler.
Aye.
Mayor Levesey.
Aye.
Motion carries and given ordinance number 5495.
One of the things I should ask in the public hearing is how you guys are gonna spell this, because we have it like 4 different ways in the agenda, so I will ask you that at the end of the meeting. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 9, introduction and reading of Bill 5400, establishing the Major Lux Community Improvement District.
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
First reading of Bill 5400, an ordinance approving the petition for establishment of the Major Lux 2 Community Improvement District and establishing the district.
Your Honor, I move to approve the first reading and proceed with the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Motion carries. Second reading.
Second reading of Bill 5400, an ordinance approving the petition for establishment of the Major Lux 2 Community Improvement District and establishing the district.
Your Honor, I move we approve on the second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Brummel.
Aye.
Erickson.
Aye.
Markworth.
Aye.
Rowan.
Aye.
Kaler.
Aye.
Tholen.
Aye.
Mayor Levesey.
Aye.
Motion carries given ordinance number 5496.
Next item is item 10, introduction and reading of Bill 5401, approving the industrial development project in Chapter 100 bonds for Major Lux 2.
I'll introduce this one too, Your Honor.
Good job.
First reading of Bill 5401, an ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project authorizing the issuance of taxable industrial development revenue bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $23 million and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection herein.
Your Honor, I move to approve the first reading and proceed with the second.
Is there a second?
Second,
Any discussion on this item?
Your Honor.
Yeah, Councilmember Brummel.
I'm just really struggling with 100% abatement for 15 years of what it's given up for the school districts and the other taxing jurisdictions. So I just wanted to voice that opinion on that situation, so.
Yeah, I think that's fair, Councilmember. I know there's a lot of discussion in the community, not just here in Blue Springs, but other surrounding communities that may or may not have been referenced already tonight. Because I think the perspective is that somehow by giving an incentive, we are taking money away from the school district or from the services of the city. And so I think outlining it for the residents is not a bad thing. Currently, this piece of property receives 0 tax dollars. No tax dollars go to the school district, no tax dollars come to the city. It's not generating anything at all. It's just a piece of property. And so by abating it for 15 years, the school district's getting 0 money now. They're getting 0 money for 15 years. And so the cost to it is not really giving anything from the city coffers to the developer. The developer's not getting any money from us. They're not getting anything that we're giving from our budget. They're just not having to expense the entire cost moving forward. And so what we're hearing and developing a lot for those residents of the community is every time we talk to a developer, they say the costs of construction right now are so high that it's almost impossible to construct a project without some sort of incentives. And so the benefit, that's the judgment that we're making here on the city council is, does the community benefit from this project instead of leaving it as a vacant property? And so some of us, if we make that judgment, we're getting maybe 100 new residents for a 70-unit apartment building. They're gonna generate sales tax that hasn't currently been generated. Or maybe residents move to this apartment complex that are in houses now. And so they're vacating houses that then can be sold to other residents. As we know, housing is a real big shortage right now. And so that is a potential benefit. The sales tax generation for 100 residents is probably like, for 2.5% sales tax, what the city has is maybe like $50,000 a year. So it's not a lot. It's maybe another cop. It's maybe another employee. But that 2.5% is out of an average of about $20,000 in sales that an average resident might bring. So that's about a $2 million impact that 100 residents could have to the community. And so I think that's worth sharing with the public, that this is something that we're not giving the developer money, we're not giving away revenue, we are just simply saying they don't have to pay the costs associated with the project fully because of the community benefit that they might be giving to the residents and the community of Blue Springs. So I think that's helpful, and I think as Councilmember Brummel talks about, that's a hard judgment for us to take, is whether or not this property could do anything. If it sits vacant for 15 years and nobody gets it, that's fine. If something gets built there that does generate property tax and does generate sales tax, then it could have been a benefit to the school district or to the city. And so those are the judgments we're making. We think oftentimes we're making those on behalf of the residents in a positive way. And so that's how we outline this. I think we're going to talk about this a lot. I don't think it's going to be the last project asking for incentives. And so I think we're going to be very intentional about sharing with you, the residents, what the impact is and what the benefit we get to the community as we do this. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Any other discussion from the council on this item before we go to the public? Councilmember Rowan.
Yes, thank you. Before I even asked, thanks. Again, I'm with Councilman Brummel on this. The other thing that you'd mentioned is that this is probably not the last time this will come up, and I'm only hesitant on this because I don't want to set a precedent for this is how we do it all the way down the road. Granted, if it does fit for the other projects that come down the road, then maybe it is a good fit. I just, like I said, I'm so questioning. I did like your answer on that. Thank you.
Okay. We will go to the, and we already done public hearing, sorry. Okay, this is still first reading. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Second reading.
Second reading of Bill 5401, an ordinance approving a plan for an industrial development project, authorizing the issuance of taxable industrial development revenue bonds in a maximum aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $23 million, and authorizing certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Your Honor, I move we approve on the second reading and sign the appropriate ordinance number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, then we roll call.
Councilmember Erickson,
Aye.
Markworth,
Aye.
Rowan,
No.
Kaler,
Aye.
Tholen,
Aye.
Brummel,
No.
Mayor Levacy.
Aye.
Motion carries and given ordinance number 5497.
Okay, I do have a speaker appearance warrant, but it appears to be for the visitor section and not one of the items on our agenda, so we will move to item 12, which is a resolution approving a contract with Amino Brothers for the Main Street improvements. Do I have an introduction?
Introduction it is, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaler.
You jumped on me.
Yes, right.
You're in a hurry.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is just a resolution, so I just need a voice vote, but is there any discussion on this motion? See none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Motion carries. We'll move on to item 13. This is introduction and reading of Bill 5402, accepting the temporary and permanent easements for the Main Street improvements.
I'll introduce it, Your Honor.
First reading of Bill 5402, an ordinance accepting temporary construction and permanent utility easements from the abutting property owners for the Main Street Improvements Project, Project 2025 Bonds WA 25.
Do I have an?
Oh. I move to approve the first reading and proceed with the second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Motion carries. Second reading.
Second reading of Bill 5402, an ordinance accepting temporary construction and permanent utility easements from the abutting property owners for the Main Street Improvements Project, Project 2025 Bonds WA 25.
Your Honor, I move we approve on the second reading and assign the appropriate ordinance number.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Councilmember Markworth,
Aye.
Rowan,
Aye.
Kaler,
Aye.
Tholen,
Aye.
Brummel,
Aye.
Erickson,
Aye.
Mayor Levacy.
Aye.
Motion carries given ordinance number 5498.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation for our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. And then we have some friends from Barry Dunn here, as well as staff. Parks Director, looks like he's getting prepared.
We are ready. Those people that left early, they're missing all the fun stuff.
I know, this is the good stuff, man. And we got I'll just recognize we have most of the Park Commission here in the audience with us and several Parks employees, so they're excited about it as well. Please continue.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Blue Springs City Council. It's great to be with you. My name is Ryan Hegernus. I'm a manager with Barry Dunn, and I'm joined by my colleague over this shoulder, J.R. Clanton, also with Barry Dunn. And it's been our privilege to work alongside your staff and community over the last year plus on this plan, and we're excited to share at a high level the details of this plan with you today. And before we get into the bulk of the presentation, which should be rather short, about 15 to 20 slides here, I wanted to start off just by pointing out that for this particular process, sometimes when we go into a community to do a master plan, there's an issue, a big issue to solve, or organizational challenge or something of that nature. And happy to say there's so much for Blue Springs to be proud of in this process. That's not the case. This is really us helping a really high-performing organization just optimize and become a little bit better. And I think some of the stats here point to the success of the department over the last decade or so with the previous master plan and all that they've done to improve the community, improve the parks. And that really showed through the statistically valid survey that we did with your community, where we see more higher than average park utilization through the community, significantly higher than national averages, and also a significantly higher reporting of the quality of the parks and amenities that are offered to the community. So just want to start by giving kudos to the city, to all of you, to the staff who have implemented those improvements over the years to get you to where you are today. And as you'll see in some of these other slides, how efficient this operation is. So as we make recommendations in this plan, it's really in the spirit of optimizing an already high-performing organization. So today I want to walk through the master plan timeline and the process that we've gone through for plan finalization. We'll talk about some of the key findings. We will look at the strategic plan and some of the recommendations and priorities there, and then talk about next steps. Before we get into that, just wanted to provide a little bit of definition. We'll be using a few different terms here, and I want to provide some context in terms of what we're talking about when we say master plan, strategic plan, or implementation plan is another term that you may hear. So Blue Springs had the foresight to bring us on to not only do a Parks and Recreation master plan, but also a strategic plan. So that master plan is going to be a long-range outlook. It's very data and analysis driven. It has very much an external focus on what is the future of Blue Springs Parks and Recreation want to be. That strategic plan is going to be more of a near to midterm focus, maybe 3 to 5 year outlook, and more of an internal focus on what are we doing as staff and as an organization to move things forward. And then the implementation plan, which we'll talk about towards the end, we'll be doing a workshop with staff to help develop that implementation plan, is really looking at the short term over the next 1 to 3 years. How do we get the momentum going on this master plan and strategic plan? And it's very tactical. Who's doing what? When are they doing it? How are they doing it? So just a little bit of a timeline. We began this process with you in the early part of 2025. A lot of the community engagement work and the analysis work happened over the summer and into the fall, at which point we transitioned into our visioning mode. And we had visioning workshops with staff, with the Park Commission. I had conversations with you to receive input on the findings at that point. And then we've gone through that draft phase, and now we are in the finalization and implementation phase. I wanted to just zoom in a little bit on those final few phases and just call a few things out. We did, after that visioning process, receive some updated data, and so we did make some revisions to our earlier deliverables to just bring those up to date with new data. We met with you all on March 30th and presented findings, or had opportunity for input on that draft plan, and then are here with you today with a much prettier graphic design plan that is hopefully much more easy to digest and ready for the community. So we're looking forward to your input on that. Tomorrow we will be spending time with staff to do that implementation workshop and build out that implementation plan. And the goal is then for staff to bring that to you to validate that draft plan and make sure that that's in line with the city's overall goals and objectives before moving forward with that. So we've already provided a lot of information to you previously. Just wanted to highlight a few of the key findings from the process. There was a lot, hundreds of pages of analysis that were done both by Barry Dunn and by our partners with Vireo and the ETC Institute. One thing I wanted to point out when it comes to the parkland in Blue Springs, you are doing a great job in terms of people's access to parks. When we look at national standards, Blue Springs is at or exceeding what would typically be offered in terms of acreage of parkland. And especially when we consider parkland and natural areas that aren't managed by Blue Springs, but that your community has access to, it's very high. Now, where there were some opportunities identified is in terms of the quantity of parks and some gaps, of course, in the south of Blue Springs. As a community grows, there are some gaps there to address, and of course, kudos to your team for already having plans to address those gaps and those needs. And then there was a lot of analysis in terms of finances, looking at expenditures, looking at capital expenditures, looking at revenues, and just, I think this chart does the best job of wrapping everything up. As we look at Blue Springs and look at the amount of costs that they're recovering through the revenues that they bring in through their programs, their fees, their memberships, sponsorships, etc., it is well above what we see typically. And in fact, you can see the NRPA, that's a National Park and Recreation Association. They report that the upper quartile for cost recovery nationwide is at about 53%, and Blue Springs is nearly 12% higher than that. So it just speaks to the efficiency of what you offer in the community and how well that you're operating and providing the most value to your community for the dollars that are spent. So another kudos to your team. So I want to talk about how did we then develop priorities from this plan? And a lot of this was listening to the community. We spent many months over the summer at events, at coffee shops, at the Independence Day celebration, engaging with the community in a variety of ways. Some of that was conversation, input cards, budget exercises where we had play money. And we heard from so many people across the community. Your communications team did a great job getting the word out through emails, through social media, through signage in parks and facilities. So the word was definitely out there that this process was happening, and we received a considerable amount of engagement. And I think most importantly, the statistically valid survey that was done provides you that academic rigor, the validity to know not only did we hear from your community and those who are engaged and interested, but specifically within a specific confidence interval, what is the true interests and desires of your community from a random sampled population? And I'm happy to say that in most cases, both that feedback generally from the community and what we saw in the statistically valid survey was very well aligned. And so that really speaks to the input and engagement of your community. So from that survey and from all that public input, we scored those based on priority, frequency of what we heard, what the survey identified as the greatest needs by the most people in the community and what were their highest priorities, and gave us this list that you've seen previously of a summary of program and facility needs and operational needs. And so this information was then used in our visioning workshop. And as part of that process, we worked with staff, with the Park Commission, to develop some specific strategic priorities that fed into the strategic plan. You can go ahead, one more slide. There's a few images of some of those workshops. You see very interactive, some sentence strips and dots, and a lot of great feedback that went into this, both from staff and the Park Commission. And Justin, if we can go one more slide here. So this input fed into the strategic plan that was developed. Again, this is that near to midterm, kind of 3 to 5 year horizon of what are the priorities and what are the specific goals that we're trying to achieve. It was important for us that that aligned with the citywide strategic plan, and you can see on the screen there those strategic priorities. For this plan, there was a new set of strategic priorities developed that were many of those very much aligned, but we made sure that for each of those we talked about how they tie back to the citywide strategic plan. So as part of this process, there is a revised Blue Springs Parks and Recreation mission and vision statement that you see on the screen there, as well as the strategic priorities of high quality of life, community identity, accessibility, increased awareness, balanced growth, and organizational health. And for each of those in that strategic plan, you'll find a goal statement, you will find a list of objectives, and then a list of strategic actions and how they align with the overall citywide strategic plan. So the next step that we'll be embarking on with staff tomorrow is taking those objectives and strategic actions and getting very specific about specific actions that can be taken to put this plan into action over the next couple of years. And so that will be a living document that staff will have that can be sorted by strategic priority, by individual, by date, to talk about how are we going to move each of these items forward. So that information will be synthesized after our workshops tomorrow, provided back to staff to review, and then for all of you to weigh in on and provide additional input and ensure that alignment that's so important. I think I just talked through a lot of those next steps here, but you see that outlined on the screen here as our final steps in this process. And with that, we are happy to answer any questions that you have.
You have any questions about the Parks Master Plan? We have two former park commissioners up here that are now city council members. So
We always love that.
well represented here on the city council. I know I had a chance to talk to you before the meeting. I know there was a lot of conversation about the investment that Blue Springs is making in its parks and kind of how that benchmarks to like communities. Can you talk about that a little bit, what the data said and what that looks like for how we're addressing that now?
Absolutely. So we looked at several different benchmarks for Blue Springs. And one thing that I loved when we asked staff about how they wanted to benchmark themselves, they wanted to benchmark themselves against the best of the best. So instead of just looking at nationwide averages or regional peers, we did that, but they also wanted to look at those agencies that have been finalists for the National Gold Medal Award. So in the Park and Recreation field, that's an annual award given to communities based on population cohorts. So we looked at the finalists for that award over the last many years, and we used that as a specific kind of, rather than just the general population, who are those high-performing agencies nationwide and in your region, and also benchmarked you against those. And speaking of that, to that cost recovery of your agency, when we look at your overall operating expenditures, we're on par, but a little bit lower than those peer organizations, whereas your revenues were a bit higher. And then in terms of the investment of the community in recent years, your capital improvement expenditures were above what we see from all of those peer groups, across the board. So I think that half-cent sales tax that you have dedicated towards capital improvements has really done a lot in recent years and into the future to help to bring these things to reality. Anything you'd add there, JR, financial whiz? Yeah.
Could you also talk a little about the engagement that you received through this process, so we can be pretty confident that it's a reflection of what the community wants out of our park system?
Yes, one of the things that Berry Dunn prides itself on is its approach to community engagement. We realize that there's only a handful of people that want to show up to a civic building on an evening to provide input. And so while we did host some focus groups and things of that nature, we really wanted to be present in the community. So multiple trips, multiple days, where we were talking to people at existing events or at the coffee shop, as I'd mentioned, just showing up to parks during busy days during the summer at the splash pad and canvassing the park, handing a lot of parents watching their children play, and while they're sitting there giving them an input card and asking them to share insights about their experience. We had a lot of local businesses that were willing to put up posters or business cards available to people. So we saw, we like to track touch points, so how many people interacted in one way or another. They received an email or saw something on social media, or they engaged with us at an event, and had over 145,000 of those touch points across the community. We had hundreds of comment cards that were completed, hundreds of inputs and thousands of visits to the online engagement site, so 24/7 people could go to a website, learn about the plan, provide input either through a map or through an ideas wall or through a budget exercise or the survey. And then hundreds of responses to that statistically valid survey. And we provided that both for the random sample, and we received more responses than were necessary for the statistical validity. But we also made that survey available to the entire community and received hundreds more responses there, and we were able to compare that data and see how that aligned. And as I mentioned earlier, it was very closely aligned. So we're very pleased with the amount of engagement that we saw from the community, and between that engagement, the awareness through the communication channels, and then that statistically valid survey, I have a lot of confidence in those results.
There's tens and tens of people that watch this meeting, so I don't know what you're talking about. All right, any other questions
Your
on our
Honor,
part? Yeah, Councilman
I'd
Rivers.
just like to thank you and thank the community publicly, because without the community's involvement that you generated, we wouldn't have this really cool report, and it's neat. It's nice to see. Thank you.
I want to piggyback on that. Ryan, I remember sitting down almost 18 months ago now and making the decision to move forward with Barry Dunn. Your expertise, your team's expertise, and your professionalism through this interaction with staff, commissioners, and as you say, public. I just want to say thank you as well, and I am excited to get on the implementation plan and really see this stuff go to work. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. With that, the presentation, then we have a resolution to adopt the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Do I have an introduction?
Yes, sir, you do.
Okay, got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, this is just a voice vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed, no? Motion carries. Next, we have the visitor section. I do have a speaker appearance form from Miss Joanne Honeywell. You will come up and you have 3 minutes to tell us what you're here to talk about.
My goodness, good evening. 3 minutes? Is all
3 minutes, that's what you got.
Okay, I'll try to make this brief. To piggyback on the Parks and Recreation Department, I'm in South Kansas City. We currently have a pocket park. I'm trying to talk to our HOA about maybe donating it to the city so the city can be responsible for it. And my reason why, I enjoy the park, but as it is, it's in our HOA and we pay for it. People from outside our little community are using it more than us. Okay, so I'll cut that off about the park, and now we'll go to the traffic issue that we have. I'm in Cambridge Park, South Kansas City. On 6th Street and Major Road, we have a problem. We've had 2 wrecks there within a week. Part of it is a sight line because of a fence that has put up. The other part is the speed of the traffic. So what they've done is put up a traffic sign right off of 7 Highway, and I think before Tennessee, but the sign is too close to 7 Highway. There's an incline there. So when you come up that hill, you're not going to get up to speed before you get to that sign. So it's not telling the true speed of the people that are going up and down that street. It needs to be moved another 200 feet to the east. Then there's another one on the pole at 6th and Major. And that's where the school bus wreck was, and the last one was on the 25th. Reduced speed needs to be there, and I lost my train of thought, sorry. Take a minute off. But we've got to do something. Also, we have golf carts flying up and down the streets, teenagers hanging off, 4 or 5 teenagers at a time hanging off. I took a picture of one in the park that I'm gonna try to get the HOA to donate to the city so that the city can have a park in South Kansas City. But just before I came here, 4 or 5 teens, they are driving up on the sidewalk into the park with golf carts, flying up and down, music loud. There are children running everywhere. I witnessed a lady with 3 or 4-year-old, didn't have her child's hand, ran across into Major. That's a busy street. Where the wrecks were, that would have been devastating. But I think that's it. Am I allowed to talk about anything previous?
Well, you got 30 seconds, but I have a question for you.
Okay,
But
30
go ahead,
seconds.
you got 30 seconds. Tell us what it is.
I want to thank you. I am opposed to Lux 2 because of the 100% tax. And I should have stood up, but I was nervous. But
I understand.
I am definitely opposed. That's too long, 27 years. I have a grandchild that lives here that's 22. She'll be almost 50 years old by the time that's paid off. No. Okay, now,
All right. Are you talking about the traffic trailer, the speed trailer that they put up, or are you talking about
Yes.
an actual sign?
yes, the trailer.
Okay.
That's on the wheels. When you come up 7, you barely get to 30 miles an hour because of that incline there. It needs to be back a little farther to get a true measure of how fast they're going. And they speed through there. They did put a speed limit sign on 6th Street. Yes, but there also needs to be one toward Adams Dairy because they come from that direction really fast. Most of these are teenagers
Well,
speed 45, 50 miles an hour up and down that street.
Well, I have 2 great pieces of information for you. First of all, they will move the speed trailer, probably this weekend.
Okay.
To a little closer to 6th and Major. Secondly, we had some of your neighbors here 2 meetings ago
Good.
after that bus accident happened.
Yes.
And the city's already started a process to do a traffic study so we can evaluate what needs to happen with that intersection to help make it safer. So
Okay.
we're already in process. It started this week, so you have good timing.
Okay, good. And then give it some thought about if we can donate that park.
We have a lot of park commissioners that will be glad to have that conversation.
Yes,
so.
yes. So I've already floated it with some of the people in the HOA. So that would be great.
Thank you for your time today. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Good night.
Good job.
Okay, do we have any council members that would like to add any comments this evening?
I'll go ahead.
Councilmember Markwood.
If we're speaking freely here, before we meet again, we will have Mother's Day coming up next weekend.
It's on my list. Good job. Good job. Well done. Well done.
No, just want to make sure, don't forget Mom. Those of you that we have lost one in the last year, so it's going to be a little bit more hurtful this year. But those of you that do, get out there and celebrate her. Make her feel special. More than just the one day, but definitely on that day.
That's absolutely true. Any other council member comments this evening?
Yeah, I want to give kudos to our, oh my gosh, what department am I trying to?
No clue.
Yes, hold on.
We're good on
No,
this. Parks, PD.
filling in
Plain.
our potholes, all right, thank
okay.
you. Oh
Public
my God,
Works,
Public Works.
yes.
So we had a little, there is a cul-de-sac in the community that we're getting some pot filled, and they had some tape to make their kickballs, like little stadium that they were doing. So they decided to just go ahead and make those permanent for them, so they have a permanent kickball field. So kudos to Public Works for doing that and made some kids extremely happy. So thank you.
Any other council member?
I don't want to steal your thunder, sir.
No,
all
you
yours.
go right ahead. I will be glad to speak as less than everybody else. So.
So, Your Honor.
Yeah, Councilmember Erickson.
No, I'll say it anyway, but having been married a long time, mothers and fathers, for you fathers in the world, just remember Father's Day is after Mother's Day, so what you do for Mother's Day could be reflected in Father's Day. That's a little bit
you're
of
smart,
wisdom.
is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
that's what I'm
Okay,
saying.
okay.
Be smart, guys.
Well, speaking of Mother's Day, Vesper Hall is doing their Mother's Day luncheon on Friday, so be sure to go join them. The lunches at Vesper Hall always great, speaking of parks, so I'm glad to join them every once in a while. It's pretty awesome. On Saturday, if you want to take Mom fishing, it's our fishing derby. It will be at Rotary Park on Saturday, so I don't know what time that starts. It's early, 9 a.m. Okay, fishing derby, 9 a.m. at Rotary Park, so that's always exciting. And then, yes, of course, on Sunday is Mother's Day, so don't forget that. I think that's all. Before the next meeting, we will have Memorial Day, so city offices will be closed on Memorial Day. No, we want it at
We'll have another
18th, so, okay. I had that on there. We have 2 more weeks before that one. Okay, ignore that one. It's not going to be closed. That's all I have, so anything I'm missing, they're just going to shake their head. Okay, with that then, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Yeah, well, I thought Jeremy was going to say that.